quarantine conversation. And y'all, I am having so much fun. Just having an opportunity to chat with friends, have my hubby on here, just different professionals who we're just having some conversations, talking about this quarantine and just bringing information that I think will be great for you all to have. So today I have Kelly Schaefer. And look, I'm going to say the Spanish way. How do I say the last name?
Oh, in Spanish, Calderon.
Calderon. Now, fun fact about Rosemary, I got 8 D's in Spanish in high school every quarter. So look at that. But Kelly is here, and we are going to dive into a conversation about raising money-savvy kids. I met Kelly, maybe
3 months?
3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
We invited her out. My girlfriend, Dion Daly, and I, we do this thing called Pearls for Girls. And with Pearls for Girls, we're having monthly meetups, inviting different professionals just to tackle topics for Girl Talk. And Kelly came and was just wonderful. And I was like, yep, she definitely has to be a part of this quarantine conversation. So welcome.
Hey, thank you. So happy to be here.
Happy that you are here. Can you tell everyone in Facebook world just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am local to the Plano, Texas area. Well, I've lived in Plano, Texas for over 20 years. I taught in Plano ISD for about 20 years.
Teaching and common.
Okay. My husband and I made a ton of financial mistakes at the beginning of our marriage. We made a huge mess of our finances. We ended up with a bankruptcy. We even had a car repossession. We were living paycheck to paycheck and beyond for years and years and years. And the stress was unbelievable. And so we had to kind of wake up and change our mindset, get control of our finances, make some habit changes and things like that. So we actually went through the Dave Ramsey program. We paid off $80,000 of debt in 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
And we have been debt-free other than our home for many, many years now. So I just started to teach my own kids about how to not follow in our footsteps. And then I took my teaching background and started to teach other people's kids too, so that, imagine if my kids knew how to manage their money and everybody else around them knew how to manage their money, it would be amazing for the next generation.
Yeah, I love that. And that's what I loved when you shared it with us, because I know that there are lots of people out there who just were never really taught how to manage money. You have hardworking parents who paid the bills. Sometimes we don't bring our children in on what that looks like. So I love that you took your passion and now you made it into a career, and you're ultimately helping society, right? Because we don't want to be paycheck to paycheck and do everything that we can to empower our children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So before we get into that, you do have kids. You have 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How old are
2
they?
boys, 16 and 11, 2 boys.
All right. Hey, we're boy moms. Hey.
Yep.
I'm not dissing girl moms or girl dads, but something about these boys. Love them. How's quarantine life looking in your house?
It has been an adjustment for sure. My husband got a promotion right around the time that we got put in shelter in place.
Okay.
So his workload doubled, and he is home a lot less. He's going into the office, but he's like him and one other person most of the time.
Okay.
And then my workload here at home kind of doubled or tripled or however. I mean, between the making sure the schoolwork gets done and the meals and and my own things. So yeah, it was a huge adjustment at the beginning, but we're good. We've kind of found our groove and get the schoolwork done in the morning, and then you have the afternoon to, do what you want to do kind of thing. So
yeah,
we're getting there.
I love how you said that you all, you have to find your groove, because I think that's what it is. A lot of times we go in with a prescripted way of what it should look like. Mm-hmm. And what works in my house may not work at your house, right?
That's right.
So you have to figure out what's working good for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. So let's dive right into it. So when we talk about raising money-savvy kids, first of all, y'all, I know a lot of people shy away from the topic of money.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that Kelly and I talked about when we first met, and I shared my experience with money mindset, is, and I didn't really realize this, is that I really had a lack mindset when it came to money, not an abundant mindset. And I really saw money, and I came from a middle class family, But my parents are now 80 and 82, and they had very, very humble beginnings. So in their case, because they really came from a very, like I'm talking like one house, one room houses, with several brothers and sisters and parents who really worked hard to make ends meet. So when they got into their careers and started working their job and opening businesses, I don't think they intentionally passed a lack mindset onto me, but I always thought of money as something I had to work really, really hard for. No one, and not that you don't have to work hard, so I don't want to put it out there that you don't. But I really, I didn't really know how to manage money, even if it was available to me. I always had like kind of a negative outlook when bills were due, even if I had, not if it was a lack of it, but even if I had the money to pay the bills, it was just like, or giving to people felt like a chore. And I realized that it's because I had a thought about money like it was fleeting, it's hard to attain. If I get it, I have to hold on to it. When I hold on to it, I'm clenching so hard, and then it's not going to be available anyway. Have you seen kind of those same trends?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm seeing a lot of families that are nervous about talking to their kids, especially about like financial mistakes that they've made, or talking to their kids about, maybe we need to cut back on sports right now because finances are hard, and they're afraid that that's going to damage their child in some way, or, things like that. So I definitely see some taboo around having these conversations at home.
Yeah. And I think that it's really important because with COVID-19, families are experiencing hardships, right? So it's one thing this topic I think is just important for those families who are experiencing hardships, how to have those conversations. But even if you're not in a hardship situation, these are just conversations we should have with our kids. Like, no one told me that I should be saving 10 to 20% of my money, or how to spend and all that. So how do you empower and share with parents?
Okay, well, if you want me to just dive in, I'll get going. So I've got 4 major tips for families, and I put them on the acronym of CASH just because it's a little easier to remember that way. But the first one is C, choices. And I feel like, money management is all about making choices with our money, right? Like the truth is we can afford anything. We just can't afford everything, right? So we have to make the right choices with our money to manage it well. But our kids don't always see that that's what's going on. What they see is, oh, they bought that, or they didn't buy that, but they don't understand the thinking behind it or the reasoning behind it. So we need to be modeling that for our kids. Like, oh, today I'm going to buy this shirt because, this one's a better value, or I can use this one more often, or something like that instead of this one. Or today we're choosing not to buy that because it's not the best choice for our family. So I think there needs to be a lot of dialogue around that. We're thinking it, they just can't see our thoughts. They have no idea why we buy the things that we buy and why we don't.
I want to stop there real quick because I love that. And that's a strategy that we use in teaching, right? Doing think alouds, right? So because children do not always know how we came to a decision. So even when you're solving a math problem or deciding what to cook for dinner, it's a great idea, parents, to get into the habit of speaking your thought process, because now your children can kind of get a glimpse of how you come to this idea. So even if if you're trying to decide what to have for lunch, we could defrost this chicken, but we already have this steak that we made the day before. And I think it would be a better choice not to waste the steak. We need to eat it now, just so that they can see that you're just not being mean and not doing the chicken. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One more thing around that is I caution parents to be very careful about using the words, we can't afford it. And there's a couple of reasons why. Like, a lot of times they'll ask us for something and we don't want to buy it. So we might use the words, we can't afford it, as kind of a cop out. Or if we really can't afford it, there's some validity to that. Absolutely. But what I encourage, I have a whole handout, and unfortunately we don't have time to get into it today, but on my website, you can find the 5 effects of saying we can't afford it to our kids and what that kind of does to their mindset. Because when we say we can't afford it, we may not necessarily mean the way that they understand it. They understand things very differently than the way we intend them to. And so I've kind of put together a handout for parents to think about how those words affect our kids and their money mindset.
Okay, and then we can go back. Can we go back and maybe add a link to the handout?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be
do
good.
that.
Yeah.
All right, so our next one is access to money. I think it's very important for kids to be having access to money. They need to be earning it some way or another. Now, I know that the topic of chores is kind of a hot spot because some families feel like chores are their family contribution, and other families use that as a way to earn money. If you are using chores as a family contribution, I just encourage you to find maybe above and beyond jobs that they can earn some money. But handing kids money just because they're breathing is not necessarily great training for adulthood, right?
Right. Because that's not how it happens in adulthood, right?
That's right. I think sometimes we think, oh, I'm raising my kids, but the truth is we're raising adults, right? Childhood is just training ground for adulthood. And so if we give them access to money now, they have the opportunity to practice making choices with that money. Now, they are going to make some big mistakes with that money. And I encourage parents to sit on their hands and let them make those mistakes. Bite their tongue and let them make those mistakes. It's so painful to watch them waste their money or lose their money or something. But you'd much rather them do this now when they're young with it $5, $10, whatever, than in adulthood with $500 or a credit card.
Right. Or a credit card. Lord.
I mean, I always think of the fact that, maybe we have to do a certain number of mistakes in life before we learn the lesson. Well, I'd rather I cannot talk today. I'd rather them do those mistakes in childhood than adulthood.
Yeah.
For sure.
Low risk. Right?
Yes.
Low risk.
Absolutely.
So
they're in the safety net.
Yeah, you learned a lesson. So what you're saying is when I'm walking past and my son wants to spend his money on Robux, go ahead and let him. And then when it's time to do a family activity, and now I can remind him not to say, well, you don't have any money, but remind him of his choice. Well, you chose to spend your money on Robux that you spent up in for 20 minutes. So since you made that choice, we're going to go have ice cream.
Yep. Absolutely. And I would counsel them by all means, like, you might want to think about that before you do it, or we might be going out for ice cream later. You might want to save your money. But if he's still insistent on doing it, then you let them.
Yeah, because we don't learn the lesson. And I will say, sometimes you just don't learn the lesson until adulthood. I remember my very first, after I got married, my mother had me on her credit card. And I went to go and buy some shoes at a store, and I ran that credit card, and they were like, it was declined. I'm like, no. Surely it wasn't declined. Like, run it again. And sure enough, my mom had taken me off of the credit card because she said, you're married now, now you have a husband, y'all can work this out together. But that was a shock to me because for a good portion of my life, it was just yes, so. Yeah,
absolutely. And some kids have to learn by making mistakes. Like my youngest, he'll learn if I just say, probably not a good idea. He's like, okay. But my oldest was born into the school of hard knocks from day one. He had to learn everything the hard way, But now he's an amazing money manager. So, they all have their different ways of learning.
Yeah, that's good. So what does the S stand for?
S is for savings.
Okay.
So I think savings is the number one way to protect our wealth as adults. Right? If I have an emergency, I can just go to my savings account and get it instead of reaching for a credit card, that sort of thing. Instead of cashing out my 401k, instead of, doing some really damaging thing to my finances. So I think they need to be practicing savings in childhood.
Yeah.
Now, convincing a kid to save for the sake of savings, because you have to save 20%, is not very motivating, and they're going to fight you on it. But I think if you, set some goals like, okay, you want this toy, let's save up for this toy. Put it one of those charts where you color the thermometer up, as they get closer and closer. Things like that, even if they're not necessarily savings for the sake of saving, but they're practicing that skill, they're flexing that muscle, it'll be much easier in adulthood. So do whatever you can to get them to save, motivate them. Now, I know I just said let them make mistakes with their money. So if they're getting close to buying the big item and they see something else they want, again, have the conversation, like that's not what you've been saving for and you're very close. And if they're insistent, I
Let
say
them
let
do
them
it.
make the mistake.
Let them do it. Yeah, yeah, because that's the way that we learn. So, what would you say to the adult? And shocker, I'm going to say I was like this for a long time. That because of your lifestyle or because of having, like, I can't afford to save. Like, I'm spending, spending, spending. And I know what it looks like when you're on the other side of that. But what would you say to the person who insists that, based on what I'm bringing home and what my responsibilities are, I just can't afford to save any money, which is why I'm in this rat race.
After paying off $80,000 in 2 years, I'm going to tell you, yes, you can. But it comes at a sacrifice.
Right.
Absolutely. We cut off cable during that time. We sold the car that we were owing money on. We sold it and paid it off. And I was driving a cash car. So there's always money to be found. You're just going to have to make some sacrifices and come down to, listing what do I really need versus what are things that I just want.
Yeah.
And I think it all comes down to needs and wants.
Yeah. And then I will say this is when you do get into the habit of whether it's saving or working towards a goal, anything worth having is going to get you uncomfortable, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you are not uncomfortable, then it's not really a goal worth attaining to me.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
so and then there's just so much freedom, and again, like for a long time I view money like, if you want money, like I don't want my kids to want money. If you want money, you're bad. If you want to be rich, you want to do that. But what
Yeah.
being responsible with your finances, and then attracting finances and working hard to get finances, it just allows you so much freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you a different minimize stress. It gives you an opportunity to give to people and organizations that you believe in, especially in a time like this. So
Right.
I just think it's so timely to have that mindset.
Absolutely. Couple more things about savings real quick before we move on. With the little ones, real little kids, you need to be saving in a clear jar so that they can see the money.
You grow. Yep.
Yep. And instead of putting 4 quarters at the bottom of that jar, or, for $1, put in the dollar bill, but crumple it up. So, imagine if they have $3, they have these 3 big crumpled bills instead of, 12 quarters at the bottom of a jar,
Right.
because when they're really little, it's all about the quantity, right? At Christmas time, they'd much rather have 15 gifts instead of one big one.
Right. Right.
It's much more motivating to them if they can see that money growing through a clear jar and it looks like a lot of money. And to them, it is.
Yeah.
I would not encourage any savings accounts until they're, 7, 8, 9. And they can start to understand that number on this piece of paper, on my statement, signifies money that's in the bank. And even though they have it, it's still mine.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of steps for a kid to go through. So, doing that any younger than say 8 is going to be hard for them to understand what's happening.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this. I love that you said that, because I've done this too. Like, I've said to my kids, oh, well, I have your savings account already, or I have an account with savings in it for you. But that's like blowing smoke. And my youngest will tell me right now, like, if he wants something, just go get it out of my savings account. Like, you said I have money, right? Just go get it. And then I love that visualization, because we connect with it more when we actually can see it, as opposed to just digitally being there.
Yeah. And same thing goes for paying them digitally for chores. Like, I know there's a lot of cool apps out and stuff, but until your child understands like how to use paper money and coins and how that all transacts at a store and stuff, I would not approach virtual money for a while.
Okay. And with this e-learning, it's an opportunity for some math lessons, right? So a lot of hands-on activities can happen around that topic. Great.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the
H, last one, honest conversations. And this one I think is really super important. Now, we talked a little bit about, modeling our thinking for making choices and stuff like that. But there are some other conversations we need to be having, especially for our older kids, our teens. They need to be, and this is hard. This was really hard for me. They need to see our bills, because they need to know how much things cost. When they're getting close to being out of the house, they have no idea how much electricity costs, or a house, or things like that. They need to know your income, because they don't know what kinds of jobs pay for the amount of money that they're going to need to keep up the lifestyle that they're used to.
Yeah.
So those are some really hard things to share. And you know your kids best. You're going to have to decide if they're ready for that or how much of that information they're ready for. And the other thing I would really encourage parents to talk about is what were your beginnings like? Your kids have only seen the lifestyle that you have given them.
Mm-hmm.
You've taken years to build this lifestyle. They
Mm-hmm.
have no idea that at the beginning you were eating ramen and you had lawn furniture in your living room, and the bumper was falling off your car and all of these things. Like, tell them what it was like at the beginning, because so many young people are getting out of the house and they feel like they're failing if they can't keep up that same lifestyle.
Yes, yes, this is great. Look, I have so many takeaways with that. One is, so my husband and I, we went through Dave Ramsey Financial Peace, and I know you and I have the same thing. Like, I love a lot of what Dave does. I don't agree with every single thing,
Right.
but using that debt snowball, and we kind of did it a little backwards. But well, it just happened a little different. But when we were able to debt snowball, but what happened is when we were going through that process and going to the classes, our son was probably a junior in high school at the time. And I remember him being so confused, like, wait, what do you mean y'all in debt? Like, why are you in debt? Like, what does that mean? And it was embarrassing, to have those conversations with him. But having those like, I wish somebody would have had conversations with me when I was getting my Discover card for the pizza and, buying these different things, like what that would look like. So being transparent with him, like, even to this day, he doesn't want a credit card, and he's my son has held me accountable. Like, if I get a statement in the mail, you're not running up those credit cards again, are you? So just creating a responsible borrower,
Yes.
and I think that that's where where things get mixed up, and why a lot of people end up being in a rat race. And then two, what you said about just really sharing your beginnings with your children and kind of letting them know, because I remember when I first got married and ran into some financial hardship with the recession. My husband was flipping real estate, and then that just stopped. I'd never imagined like struggling with money, and I never really saw that. And then when I thought about it, like, wait, my mom, I knew what she made. Like, she had to be struggling at some points in life, but I didn't know that. I was just a kid living my best life. So just being honest about what that looks like, I think that is huge, 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 huge.
And we don't want to scare them, like, especially right now with everything going on, like, oh, we've lost our job. No, we're not looking to scare them, but paint an honest picture of what's going on, or paint an honest picture of what your beginnings were like. I think back to my college days, and yeah, I didn't have two nickels to rub together, but it was also kind of fun. It was kind of an adventure. Like, how are we going to make it work this time? What's going to happen this month? And so, we pushed through that and we learned a lot. But, for me to think I was going to leave my parents' house and live the same lifestyle would have really stressed me out. And, I think what happens too is then the kids fail financially, and then they're afraid to talk to their parents about
what's going on. Right. When parents can be your biggest coaches. And I think what you just said is a great segue into the last thing we want to talk about, which is the mindset around it. Because being honest and having these conversations doesn't mean that you're going to plant negative seeds as it relates to money,
right,
in your children. And I think that that a lot of people, a lot of us, I'll put myself in that, there are negative connotations surrounded with money. Like, again, bill paying time just seems like a heavy time in the household. As opposed to saying, you know what, y'all, we are able to pay our mortgage this month, and we're quarantined in a home that we love, or hey, I'm working on paying off this debt, or we get to save this money to go towards our vacation. It's a good idea to just have those conversations and just really share how money is a blessing for your family. It's a tool that we use. It doesn't provide happiness, but it's a tool to help us give, help us take care of family, help us do all of that. And which means we have to be responsible. With whatever gift you have to be responsible. There's not a time in the world that you can just, be frivolous with any gift God has given you. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
We have a couple questions. So when do you start a credit card for your child? When do you start credit? I have a answer to that. I'm interested in seeing your answer.
I would say definitely depends on the child, if and how responsible they are. If imagine them leaving the house and they have excellent credit. Is that going to serve them well? Are they going to use it well and, use it to get an apartment of that? Or are they going to go get a brand new car and a credit card and rack up a ton of debt? So it really is a double-edged sword, in my opinion, depending on your child and how responsible they are.
Yeah. What I'll say is for my son who'll be 20, first of all, your girl almost has a 20-year-old. Like, I can't believe that. I started young, but yeah, 20-year-old. But for my 20-year-old, what I have done is, again, having these open and honest conversations. And I have a YouTube video about when you pay off your credit cards, just in terms of building your credit, not to close them. And we can talk about that. Y'all can message me if you have a question. But what I did was those cards, every card that I have now is underutilized, which means that if there is a $10,000 balance on it, $10,000 limit, we don't carry a balance more than about $1,000. I added my son as an authorized user to all my cards to help build his credit so that when he gets ready to move out or whatever, he already has some credit established. However, to your point, we're also having conversations with him because he asked me the other day, like, well, how much do you have to make in order to, what should your credit score be in order to get a car? And I explained to him the difference, like, hey, people with very poor credit can get a car.
Right.
Your credit score will determine the rate that you get. So for that same car, if your credit is poorer, you will be paying more. If it's not, so having these very specific conversations with them that credit is a tool and not something to just be thrown around. Because I think most people make the majority of their credit mistakes between like 18 and 24. So having these conversations with our kids are good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you have any parting words for the people in quarantine land? And how can they contact you? We'll put because you do offer a course and things like that for parents, and something that we can use in quarantine. So if we're looking for some ways to supplement what the school is giving us, Kelly has you.
Parting words are just keep talking to your kids about money. Just don't let it be a taboo topic. Whatever you're going through, whatever thoughts you're having, things like that, just keep sharing, just keep talking, keep the line of communication open, because at some point they're going to need somebody to talk to, and you want it to be that you want them to come to you to feel like you're the one. Yeah. So those are my parting words. As far as what I offer, I have a kids class, 10 to 14, sorry. And that is about 6 hours online, live. So I get the kids into a Zoom call and we do all of these things together. It's all based around a game. They earn a paycheck and they have to pay their expenses, and they have nothing left with their paycheck, because welcome to real life. And then eventually they get to start investing in either real estate, stock market, or business, and earning passive income. And they win the game when their passive income is enough to cover their expenses every month, and they no longer have to work if they don't want to, which is right. That would be a dream come true for all of us, right? Yeah. And then throughout the game, I do little mini lessons about budgeting, compound interest, assets and liabilities, things like that. So that's for my kids. And then for the teens, so 16 and up, there's an online self-paced video course about some of the same things, but it's much more life-based. Like, we talk about credit scores. What do they use to determine your credit score? What's going to hurt your credit score? What do they use it for? Same thing, budgeting. We talk about compound interest. So it's based on 3 pillars of earn, spend, and save. And the kids come away with two plans: a 5-year plan to get started off well. How do I earn, spend, and save during those first 5 years and survive? Mm-hmm. And then a 50-year plan to finish well and retire well. How do I earn, spend, save to thrive for the entirety of my life? Yeah.
Love it. Well, yay. Well, I am going to make sure that your information is in the comments once we finish. And I'm so thrilled that we met. So thrilled that you joined this conversation and gave us all this expertise. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for joining in.
Yes, and everybody else who's looking at the quarantine conversation, thank y'all. I'm having fun, like a lot of fun with this. The next one is on Saturday. I'm bringing one of my girlfriends on, and we're going to talk about being natural because if you noticed, Rosemary, quarantine has forced me to be natural. So we're going to talk about that and talk about loving yourself in the space that you're in, even when things aren't exactly the way you wish they were. So hope to see y'all then. Take care.
Thanks.